This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 41.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 41, the very first episode of year 2016. So happy new year. I hope you're having a great one so far. In today's episode, I've got a really special guest for you. His name is Shetty. He's the owner of daddyblogger.com, and he will be sharing a lot of great insights and advice with you today. He'll be talking about running a popular blog and making your blog popular. So enjoy today's episode. Hi, Ricky, and welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on today, Alex.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself and about what is that you do as a business.
Sure. Yeah, I'm from Vancouver, Canada, so I'm on the other side of the country from you. I know you're out in Montreal, so out here in Vancouver, I was born and raised. I graduated from university, etc. Went traveling, and then when I got back to Vancouver, I was looking at a few different business models. So I tried everything from like network marketing to running the event production kind of company, putting on events, conferences, workshops, etc. And then now I've been really focused on more online businesses. So I have a pretty successful blog, and I just launched another blog. And I have things like I have an ebook on Kindle, and I have some online products like some digital courses. I even have a membership site, and I do some Skype coaching as well. So nowadays I'm really focused more on transitioning a lot of what I was doing offline. In terms of events and training and workshops, and I'm trying to transition as much of that online as possible. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me, Alex.
Awesome. So, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about those websites that you're running. Well, your blogs, actually. What are they, and how are you making it happen?
Sure, yeah. So, and one of my big passions, by the way, is all about family and fatherhood. And I launched my first blog just over 3 years ago, and it's called daddyblogger.com. And just like it sounds, Daddy Blogger, it's all about parenting and fatherhood. And I write about parenting from a father's perspective because there's literally millions and millions of mom blogs out there. But us dads, we don't really get a lot of resources geared specifically targeted to us. Not just online, but even at bookshops or libraries or even, like the support groups, etc. A lot of it's targeting moms. So when I became a dad, which was just over 3 years ago, I was really looking for resources targeting people like me, new dads, but I couldn't find many. So I was kind of like, okay, there needs to be more. There's literally, new dads who are becoming new dads every day, of the year.
Yeah.
Yet there's so few resources. So that's when I launched. I had the idea and I launched my website. And on daddyblogger.com, I do a few different things. One is kind of like you. I know you interview different entrepreneurs and all. So for me, I interview fathers, but different type of fathers. Everything from stay-at-home dads to working dads to entrepreneurial dads, divorced dads, married dads, different country ethnic dads, different life stages, dads who are just in the just past the teenage years to in the 20s to 30s to 40s to even like dads who've been dads the first time in their 50s. So really targeting that dad demographic. And so I do interviews, and I also do a lot of reviews on like the latest products for parents and the latest products for kids, and product reviews, service reviews. And I also do a lot of like family trips and writing about different ways that families can travel and challenges with traveling with kids, with babies and stuff like that. And it's been going well. So it's been running for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, when I was doing all these interviews, I had accumulated over 100 different interviews with dads. So I was trying to figure out, okay, should I just leave it online in terms of like I've done like Skype interviews, Google Hangout interviews, and also some in person, or should I do something else with the interviews? So I basically repurposed those interviews into a book. So I launched that book on Father's Day a couple of years ago, and it became an Amazon bestseller seller on Kindle. And I've been able to, through the book, get different speaking opportunities and, speaking trade shows and media interviews and et cetera. So, daddyblogger.com, the website, and also the the book, and I do a few different things. Like I mentioned, like I have some courses online, membership site, and I just launched on January 1st, a few days ago, a new website. And the reason I launched a new website is I found that Daddy Blogger was a little bit general, so it was encompassing as much of parenting and fatherhood as possible. But I'm personally passionate not just about father, but about travel. And I traveled a lot before I had kids and before I got married. I went to over 50 countries. And when I was doing those 50 countries, there was a lot of the couch surfing and hospitality club. Those kind of things where I would just sleep wherever and wherever I could.
Yeah.
But obviously now that I have a wife and a couple of kids, it's very hard to just sleep on someone's couch. You kind of have to change the staying environment. So I know a lot of like other parents, they were struggling with like, okay, we have young kids, and they were kind of afraid of how their kids would react, especially if they traveled outside of the Western countries. Things like places like Asia or Central or South America, or the Middle East or Africa. I think a lot of parents are scared to take their kids there because there's, poverty issues, pollution issues, like safety issues, political unrest, etc. So I really wanted to provide resources for parents who are adventurous, kind of like I was before I became a dad. And now that I'm a dad, I'm still adventurous, but I want to take my kids on the adventure too. So I just launched a website called familytravelbloggers.com. And it just launched on January 1st, so New Year's Day.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks, Alex.
And I think that's going to be something really, really interesting because, as you mentioned, there are a lot of travel blogs and a lot of travel blogs that concentrate on topics like traveling on a budget, which, as you were just talking about, talks a lot about couch surfing, about hitchhiking, about doing stuff on the budget. And as you said, when you're young and you're single, you don't really care sleeping on somebody's couch or pitching a tent even somewhere. But when you're traveling with your family and young children, that's totally different game there. And I'm sure that would be of a big value to a lot of people who want to travel with their children, but don't for those reasons that you've mentioned. It's a new territory, it's how do you do that?
Exactly. And I think, fear is what stops us from doing stuff. Like, I know when you're interviewing entrepreneurs on your podcast, I think a lot of the reasons why people stop quitting a job and starting their own business is fear. And a lot of the reasons why people don't travel is fear. And when you have kids, the fear is even escalated because there's not just a fear of you anymore. There's a fear of you and your spouse and your kids. So the fears multiply. And those fears can be quite paralyzing. And sometimes you're not even aware of it. It's almost subconscious. It's working in your mind and your heart and your kind of subconscious level, stopping you from doing things. And when you can kind of conquer those fears, that's when the real breakthroughs happen, whether it's in business or life or marriage or parenting or family. And I've realized that over the years because, I'm just like anyone else. I've had a lot of fears in business and in, launching products, etc. And when I had those fears and I succumbed to those fears, I failed. And, when I've been able to break through, I've succeeded. And even if I have failed, I just learned from it. I learned and tweaked it and improved on what I did wrong. And really, I think one of our goals as people in each and every area of our life is to be able to conquer our fears.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. That's something really, really big. And, not only about business, but when you want to do anything, any big change in your life, a lot of people would be stopped in their tracks because of fear.
Yeah, no, exactly. And even things like getting married or having kids, I think nowadays people are doing that later. And just like on a personal note, I don't mind sharing, like my family, they ended up splitting up. And that left me with a lot of fears because I had that broken family growing up. And, nowadays it's like one out of every two people or higher are divorcing, right? And does that affect the most, Alex?
Yeah.
Kids, right?
Yeah.
And, if it affects kids and when they grow up, it's going to affect them in terms of them getting married. And then when they have kids, it's going to affect them. And I had those fears, those insecurities, the self-doubts. And really, that's one of the reasons I started my blog to process what it means to be a dad and also to learn from other fathers. So, yeah, it's been definitely a journey.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And Ricky, I've got a question for you here because a lot of people start blogs and they put out great content actually, but their blogs never make it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the secret of your blog at daddyblogger.com that actually made it popular, and why do you think your blog picked up? Of course, besides the point that it's an interesting niche and you have good content.
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. And I'm sure some of your listeners, they may be thinking about starting a blog. And I think it's really important to start well because it's very hard to change your mistakes once you've started. So do some planning and preparation before you start your blog. And for me, I would say some of the reasons why I've created a successful blog is I never looked at my blog as just a blog. I always looked at my blog as I want to create a brand. So when I say Daddy Blogger, it's very much a brand. So there's a logo, there's a kind of like consistency across all the social media platforms. There's a persona there. There's kind of a place where people can identify to a brand. And if you look at the most successful brands such as Apple or Nike or McDonald's, they're not just companies or businesses. They're very much a brand. And especially things like Apple. I mean, if people are Apple fans, they're going to be so loyal to that brand, and Nike shoes or Reeboks or Adidas, right? So those are just examples of the mega brands that people know. But, as us as solopreneurs or solo entrepreneurs, we can also create brands around us. So you have Extra Paycheck podcast. It's a brand. You have the website, you have the podcast, you have a blog, you have your social media links. And I did, something very similar with my blog. So I created a logo. I think one of the key things is to spend a little bit of money on things like a logo, proper web design, proper graphic design, making sure you have, if you can, getting the social media links with the same domain name or the username, and creating that brand consistency, I think, is really, really important. So that's what I would say first is the brand. And you mentioned it when you kind of introduced the subject about the whole niche area, right? So when you're thinking of what blog to create, don't just think of a general niche. Think of a specific niche. And one of the things I've learned is the more specific the niche you can be, the more successful you'll be. So if you want to just do a business blog, it might be a little bit too general. Maybe niche it down from business to a certain type of business, like maybe entrepreneurship. But even that is a little bit too general. So from there, maybe a startup blog. But even that is a little bit too general. So maybe a tech startup or, like a retail startup or something like that. So from niche, from business to entrepreneurship to startup to like retail startup or tech startup or social media startup, right? So try to figure out first the general niche, but then narrow it down. So mine was like, in my case, it was firstly parenting, which is very, very general. But from there, it was fatherhood, which is a little bit more specific, but still I found it was still not specific enough. And that's why I launched something even more specific, which is like family travel bloggers, which is pretty specific. And even within that, it's really like more specific than just family travel blogging. It's like long-term, slow travel with kids under 5, and overlanding instead of flying. So I think that's one of the other reasons I feel I've been successful, if you want to call it that. So really niching my subject material. And then obviously there's the whole marketing angle, Alex. So there's things like you can have the most successful blog in the world. You can be the best writer. You can have a really strong brand. You can have a strong niche. But if you don't market yourself well, you're going to have very little readers, very little followers or subscribers. So first create that brand, niche it down, and then it's marketing. So basically blitzing the internet in any way you can, right? So marketing through, I would say email marketing, doing things like MailChimp or Aweber or Constant Contact, Infusionsoft. So using one of those platforms to build up an email list and having an opt-in offer. So like I give out a report on, budget travel for families, or I have a comic book for dads. So those are kind of my lead magnets, if you want to call it that, or some people call it a lead magnet or ethical bribe. It's basically offering something of value in return for someone's email address. So building up your email address is really key. And then also social media marketing, things like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, Google+, even things like LinkedIn, Snapchat, and some of the latest ones as well. So social media. And if you can do some video blogging as well, I think it's important to have the written blog because it's good for SEO and people like reading. But I think people also like watching and listening. So I would advocate for having a connection in all three areas. So connecting to people through the written medium, through the blog, and also through the visual medium, which is like YouTube or Vimeo, and also through the audio medium, such as like what you're doing here on your podcast. And then you can do things like guest blog posting, you can do contests, you can do interviews, and that's really marketing. So like, for example, here, Alex, when we are doing our interview, when it goes live, I'm going to share that. And I'm going to share that with my network. And all of a sudden, people who had never heard of Extra Paycheck podcast will hear about you, and then they'll subscribe to you. And vice versa. People who have never heard of me, Ricky Shetty Daddy Blogger, will be exposed to your audience. So it's actually a win-win for both of us, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's the same with your blog. It's kind of the same principle. So when you have your blog, market it across any of the mediums as possible, and get on different podcasts, do guest blog posting on other people's websites, ask people to guest blog on yours, join some Facebook groups on whatever topic you're passionate about, and then post your links on there. And there's a lot more tips, but hopefully that was a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really, really great tips, man. And I loved what you said about all that kind of cross-promoting content between people, because sometimes I get emails from people telling me, hey, I was a long-time subscriber to this person and you interviewed him on your podcast, and they shared the link, and that's how I discovered your podcast, and I'm loving it, and I signed up to your list and so on. And sometimes I get emails from my own readers telling me, well, thank you for recording this podcast with such a person, because I've been struggling, let's say, with my email marketing. And this guy that you just interviewed, he's like a internet marketing, email marketing guru, and he sold me this amazing course. And so, it's like, it's not just like you said, it's fun to talk to people, let's say, on a podcast. That's why I really enjoy meeting entrepreneurs and really interesting people and talking about them. But it's also fun that you expose those people to others, to your audience, and your business or your blog gets exposed to their audiences. And, as you mentioned, sometimes people do really need that, and they love the fact. So that helps a lot. I find that this helps a lot, and it could work with pretty much any brand.
Yeah, exactly. So like, even though my brand is very specific to the father demographic, it can work with any and all sectors, everything from fitness to food to fashion, photography, any and all sectors. You just apply the same principles we're talking about: the branding, the niching, the branding, the marketing, the email marketing, the video blogging, etc. Right? So similar principles to any and all niches.
Yeah, and I'm smiling here because as we're talking about that, I'm thinking about someone very specific, someone that I actually met online, but the guy's from Montreal. I met him online, then eventually I met him offline, and we became friends. He's an entrepreneur, and he is a first-time dad as of recently. So I'm pretty sure he will check out your website. That's like guaranteed after listening to this podcast, because he's a dad and he would need this kind of advice for sure. So just putting it out there.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure some of your listeners are dads, or even if they're not dads yet, maybe they want to be dads in 5-10 years down the line, right? So it's never too early to be prepared. I wish I'd be more prepared when I was became a parent for the first time. So yeah, be prepared early.
Yeah. Right, Ricky. So you mentioned that you will be traveling quite a bit in 2016 with your family. So could you tell us a little bit more about those plans?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, before I got married and had kids, I traveled a lot. So I done, and I say I travel a lot. Maybe relative to some people, I travel a lot, but relative to the world, I travel way little because, I mark all the places I've been on a map. But I look at where I've been, and it's so little. It's like only a fraction of the whole world. So it's kind of relative where you've traveled. But anyway, I traveled to Europe. I've traveled to Asia. So I did a working holiday, and me and Alex are both Canadians here, so we can work in any of the Commonwealth countries before we're 35, which is a really cool benefit. So I was able to work in England, I was able to work in Australia, and then I was able to teach English in Japan, and I traveled over Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Middle East, etc. But there was two geographic areas that I've been passionate to travel in. One was South America, and the other was Africa. And I kept holding them off, obviously, because now I got married, and then I had these two young kids, and I was building up a business. But I felt the timing was kind of like I don't know if it's ever going to be fully right, but it was right enough. It was right enough for us. And a few of the circumstances which I feel has led to this is, first, so we have the two kids, and we're expecting a third one in May. So, that's good.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah. So we're expecting a third kid. And so my wife is actually going to go on maternity leave, which is a whole year. If you're in Canada, you get a whole year of paid maternity leave. So I felt all the circumstances were coming into place. So firstly, my wife's going to be off, but she's still going to be getting the income coming in. And our place, we're debating whether we're going to rent it long-term or short-term on things like Airbnb, etc. So we're trying to figure out which will generate the most income coming in. So we've tried out Airbnb, and it seems to be making more income, but it doesn't have the consistency of bookings across the whole calendar month. So we're doing a little bit of research into that. And then, a few of my different online ventures, they bring me some part-time income coming in monthly as well. And now that we've had two kids, we feel a lot more confident with the third one. Obviously, the first one is very scary, and we're not sure what we're doing, etc. Second one was a little bit easier, and third one will be a lot easier. So we decided basically that once our third child is born, and as long as the child's healthy and all, we'll wait a month or so before after the birth, and then we're gonna take the family traveling. So we want to go from Mexico to Panama overland. So that's Latin America through Nicaragua, Honduras, Belize, etc. So Mexico to Panama overland, and then we want to do central, and then we want to go into South America. And we chose this region for a few reasons. One was never been there, really interested in Latin culture. It's also fairly easy for us to get to from Vancouver to Mexico. Flights are cheap, and also if anything goes wrong, it's very easy for us to fly back. So it's not like we're on the other side of the world. We're still in the same kind of geographic area, the Americas. So it's fairly cheap to get to, but also it's very fairly cheap to travel in. So compared to somewhere like Europe, which is very expensive, or Australia, which is very expensive, or Canada, US, which is very expensive to travel in relative to, Asia or Central America, South America, we decided to go to Central and South America because it's cheap to get to and also cheap to travel in. And thirdly, it's also convenient. So you don't really have to fly between places. You can do most of it over land, which also saves on money, but it's also convenience, right? So you don't have to worry about passport checks or, flying, and, especially with kids, like the ears pop with the air pressure, etc. So doing things like, local buses, etc. And we've done a few different overland trips here from Vancouver to Calgary, etc. So we've got the kids used to road tripping and all, and they can handle it here. So now it's going to be more of a question of whether they can handle the food and other kind of variables. So that's the plan. We're planning to leave on July 1st, which is Canada Day, and travel for 1 year around. It might be like 8 months, it might be a year, but our plan is to be a year. And cover as much of Central and South America as possible. So that's the plan going forward.
That's awesome stuff, man. And I think that's going to be your content for your new blog. But the question comes in here: how do you think you'll be able to manage your online business while traveling so much?
Well, the beauty of a laptop lifestyle, right? There's this whole term nowadays. It's called being a digital nomad. And basically, there was this term like nomadic people have existed ever since Adam and Eve, right? Like people have been traveling from place to place and, working as you go, etc. So I think that concept of being a nomad and working has been there since since the beginning. But nowadays in the 21st century, it's very much being a digital nomad. So pretty much you can connect to the internet in most of the major countries and areas in the world, with maybe some exceptions of villages or some remote places like the Amazon jungle, etc. Right? Like obviously. Yeah, there. But other than that, you can connect more or less in most of the major cities and towns in the world. And where we're going, I mean, obviously there's a lot of internet connection there. So I can be online pretty much every day, just like I'm here. I mean, I have my laptop with me, so I'll be. And we have a cell phone which has Wi-Fi services too. So that's the beauty of internet marketing, that you can be working anywhere in the world through your laptop or your cell phone. So I can still manage what I'm doing online from anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And that's something that I'd like to mention in this show, that for those who are listening and who might be interested in this kind of lifestyle, digital nomads, guys, it's not just about traveling to most beautiful places and snapping a picture for Instagram and then making loads of money. That's not how it works. Unfortunately, you will have to work quite a bit. And I find for me personally, it's hard to do because it's a lot easier for me to be concentrated and to stay organized at home. So when I'm traveling, and sometimes, Ricky, when I travel, sometimes I do it like you. I go for like 5 months, 6 months at a time, and I find it complicated to kind of stay as organized and disciplined to actually do the work, because sometimes you really don't want to, because you see all these beautiful places that you want to visit, and you're like, well, I'll write that blog post tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes because you yet find another beautiful place to visit and another amazing activity to do in Asia or wherever you are. So that's something that I think could be appealing to a lot of people, but it's something that people should know it's not the easiest thing in the world, and you have to be pretty disciplined to actually, do the two at the same time, I think. That's my personal experience on that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Alex. I totally agree. Obviously, when you're at home and you kind of have a routine, even though you might not be working a 9-to-5 job, because that's probably the ideal routine, because you're working 9 to 5, you're going to office, and then you kind of know what to expect. That's the optimal routine. But then even when you're at home and you're working as an entrepreneur, you still need to have some kind of routine, whether it's like office hours or like certain days of the week you work no matter what. And when you're traveling, obviously that's even harder. So I think it's important to figure out, in my case, I really figure out what is my optimal working time, but also optimal working environment. So for me, I'm very much a night owl. I get energized at night, and especially I think it works because my kids are sleeping then too, and my wife's sleeping, and then I have all this time and energy as well, and I'm able to do a lot of my work at night when my kids are sleeping, and I do that even here in Vancouver. So when we're traveling, I feel that I'll be sticking to more or less the same kind of schedule, if you want to call it that. And then the next morning, because I'll work late into the night, then I can sleep in, because we don't have to get to a job, or if we're sightseeing, we don't have to go there like 9 a.m. or whatever. We can sightsee when we want, really. So I think it's figure out your optimal working time, but also the optimal working environment. So if you feel like your home environment or wherever you're staying isn't working for you, then find a coffee shop, or nowadays there's this thing called co-working spaces, and I'm a big advocate of co-working spaces. You can find them in a lot of countries, and it's a really up and coming phenomenon. It's basically like, instead of, if you're an entrepreneur and you've struggled to work from home and maybe you can't afford to rent your own office space, it's basically renting out a desk with other entrepreneurs. So that's called co-working. For me, I'm okay with working in a coffee shop or even at home, like I said, when my kids are sleeping. So figure out your optimal working time and your optimal work environment, both at home, but also when you're traveling.
Yeah, totally. That's something that we need to pay a lot of attention to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ricky, and I know that quite a bit of your traffic, let's say, to your website and your audience, they come from social media.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share maybe some advice or some of your personal experiences with social media? How do you manage that, and how do you do that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because social media, people call themselves like specialists, social media specialists or social media experts, but social media is such a broad and such a encompassing topic, it's very hard to become an expert in all the social media, even if you spend like 24/7 working at it, because social media is always changing and there's new platforms and there's new algorithm changes, etc. So unless even if you're working on Facebook or something, you're still not an expert, I would say. So
Yeah.
For me, it's been a lot of trial and error, and I'll definitely share some of the things that worked for me. You got to figure out, I think, what social media platforms work for you. So just like I talked about optimal working time, etc., maybe figure out your optimal social media platform. So which is your personal optimal social media platform? So mine might be very different than Alex's. So I have a podcast as well, but I found it wasn't as effective for me. I prefer like videos, for example. So I really focus more on videos. So now my YouTube channel is like, I have like 5,000 videos on my YouTube channel now. A lot of
Wow.
like family videos, but it was like travel stuff, video reviews. A lot of them have been like, I used to run conferences, workshops. So I just put them all in playlists. So I have a lot of videos on there, like 5,000 plus, literally. And now I have almost 1 million views. It's like 900,000. So it's going to hit 1 million views in the next few months.
Awesome.
And YouTube marketing is obviously important because Google owns YouTube. And Google's the biggest search engine in the world. YouTube's the second biggest search engine in the world. So it's really important to, I would say, get on YouTube. And, if you're into just audio, I would definitely recommend getting onto iTunes and podcasting. And if you can get on the main social media platforms, like the big five, things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Google+, those are pretty much the big five. And then you got to figure out what's good for your niche. So if you're really into business or entrepreneurship, then things like LinkedIn and a LinkedIn publisher, LinkedIn blogging, that's really important to be on and be present because that's where your readers are. That's where your subscribers, your followers are, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're more into like something visual, like food or travel or cars, then things like Instagram and Pinterest. If you're targeting like women, like fashion, or et cetera, then I think Pinterest is really important because Pinterest is a huge female demographic. So figure out what's your kind of like area of specialization. Social media is important. So I like and figure out what you like too. Like even though Pinterest might be good for you, but if you don't like it, then don't use it. So figure out what's good for you, but also what you like. And if you don't like video blogging, if you don't like being front and center, then don't do YouTube. If you don't like doing audio, don't do podcasting. So I don't like to just tell people to do everything. Do what's good for you. And what's worked for me also is on Facebook, because I think Facebook, pretty much everyone's on it. So you should be on Facebook to some degree, whether that's just having your Facebook profile, whether that's having a Facebook fan page, whether that's creating a Facebook group, because most of your readers, listeners, followers, subscribers are going to be on Facebook. And at first, I just had my personal profile and my fan page. And I was able to build my fan page to a few thousand fans. But the problem nowadays with Facebook is that you got to pay to play. They call it pay to play. So basically, to reach your own fans, you got to pay to either sponsor your post or boost your post or even boost your page to get it out there, right? So I've tried a little bit of that, but I more or less like the more organic marketing, the unpaid. And I found I was struggling to get, even though I had that, couple of thousand following on my Facebook page, I was struggling to engage with them. So for the last few years, I've been experimenting more with Facebook groups. And that's really been successful for me. So I manage about 8 to 10 different Facebook groups. And they're focused on different niche areas. So I'm big into blogging and social media, internet marketing, parenting. So I have different groups for each of those niches. So I have like a Facebook group specifically for dad. Then I have a Facebook group specifically for social media. And then I have a Facebook group specifically for family travel. So I find the groups work really well for me because firstly, it's free. You don't have to pay to play. You don't have to pay to boost your posts. And it's not just about the page owner. This is something I really like because on the Facebook fan pages, it's very much about the page owner promoting his or her content to the page's fans. So it's very much like a one way directed conversation. So the page owner is directing the conversation, and the fans are responding and dialoguing with the page owner. Whereas group, it's very much a multi-dimensional conversation. So basically, anyone can post something in the group. People can ask questions. They can post articles. So a lot of dialogue back and forth. So I'm a big advocate of creating Facebook groups. So again, no matter what niche, no matter what area you're in, create a group around that. And you can start with just your own kind of area of influence and get people to join it then. But then people just find it. Like Facebook will recommend it. People will just be searching for different topics, and they'll grow and it will grow and grow through there. So that's what has worked for me on social media. And also, I just want to bring up another point. I like integrating the online and the offline. So I also have meetup groups. And Meetup is kind of like a social media platform too. You can just go to meetup.com and you can create a group around any and all areas. So anything from hiking to languages to things like even something obscure like bubble tea or, Star Wars fans, or no matter what you like, you'll find other people who like the same thing. And you can create a Meetup group around that. And that's something else I've done. So I've created 3 different groups over the last 3 years. Again, around my areas of interest, so like blogging and fatherhood, and I have a food one and now a travel one. And the meetups are very much to connect people from the online world into the offline world, and then going back and forth. So basically, you use your online marketing tools to bring people to an offline event. From the offline event, you reconnect them online. And I do that back and forth, especially on a localized level. But you can do that, around the world too. Meetup is pretty much, in all the major developed countries. So those are some tips that work for me. And I can keep talking about other social media kind of marketing tools. But Facebook groups, I would say, figuring out kind of which social media works for you, and integrating the online and the offline through something like Meetup.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. And personally, what helped me a lot, it was about 2 years ago, I read the book by Gary Vaynerchuk, Jab, Right Hook. And he goes very deep into explaining how to understand which social media channel will work for you and which one probably wouldn't work for you. So that's something I could recommend as well. As Ricky mentioned, it's not just being everywhere and using everything. I mean, it could work for some people, but it's really, I think, spending the most time on platforms that are the most beneficial to your niche and to your audience, to your business. That's quite important here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this whole concept called the avatar. So avatar is basically your ideal reader or your ideal buyer, your ideal client. So figuring out who your ideal client is in terms of all the areas. So like the demographic areas, the psychographic areas. So like the gender, geographic location, family income, marital status, religion, political affiliation, right? So figuring out who is your ideal avatar, and then figuring out where does your avatar hang out. Does your avatar hang out on Pinterest? Does your avatar really like Snapchat? So like, for example, if your avatar is like in the teens or early young adults, maybe in the teens or early 20s, then you got to be on Snapchat or Instagram, because that's where a lot of those people in the teens or early 20s are, Snapchat and Instagram, right? But if your avatar is a little bit older, then maybe things like Facebook or Twitter. So I think it's really important figuring out who your avatar is and where does he or she hang out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ricky. And I want to go back to your personal story, because it's something I wanted to ask you at the beginning of the podcast, but I totally forgot. And the question was, how did you make this, not transition, but how did you decide that, look, I'm not, even though I have a university degree, I'm not going to look for a full-time job. I'm going to do this online blogging thing, and I'm going to start my own, your own entrepreneurship story or your own venture, instead of getting a job. How did that happen to you?
Yeah, great question, Alex. I think that's a journey that's important to look at. And I was following the traditional route that a lot of people follow, which is, go to school, get a university degree, get a job, get married, have kids, retire. After you retire, travel the world, right? So that's what I was thinking would be the ideal scenario to follow, because that's, I don't know if you call it the American dream or kind of the way that we've been brought up. I mean, my background's Indian, so I'm Indo-Canadian, born in Canada, but raised by Indian parents. So with the Indian or like maybe an Asian culture, it's very traditional to do that model. And hey, my parents did it, so you kind of follow your parents at the end of the day, right? Whatever they do, you kind of think, hey, parents know best, so you kind of do it, right? But I think around my university years when I was studying, I did my degree in psychology, so I was very analytic, and a lot of psych majors. It's hard to get a job, honestly, after you get a psych degree. If you just get your psych degree alone, it's important to get like a master's in counseling or clinical psychology, etc. So because I had the psych degree, it's great to have a degree, and it really taught me how to think. So even though now I'm not using it, specifically to my career, actually I am, because I use psychology in a lot of what I'm doing too, because it's really the understanding of human behavior. And no matter what degree you have, I think I'm a big advocate of just education generally, whether that's doing like a traditional degree or like a more like hands-on practical diploma, or just getting like the school of hard knocks, they call it, right? Just lifestyle experience. Education period is very important to me. So I followed the traditional route, which is the degree route. But after I finished my degree, I was kind of wondering, okay, what do I do next? And that's when I decided to go to Japan. So I could have stayed here and just got any odd job. I was working in a bank as a bank teller, but I felt kind of like confined to my teller position, serving customers. And I think just you got to figure out who you are as a person. And some people like that. They like that, the routine, the schedules, what to expect, etc. But I didn't like being boxed up to my cubicle. So that's when I went to Japan, and I taught English, and that really opened me up. And by the way, Alex, in high school, I was voted most shy. So you know how they have those high school annuals?
Yeah,
you get voted, like most handsome or most likely to succeed or class flirt or something like that. I wasn't voted any of those. I was voted most shy. So I was this really shy, introverted, a little bit insecure kid. And when I went to Japan and really started traveling, that really opened me up. So it was really discovering myself as an individual. But it wasn't really it wasn't a full journey to entrepreneurship, but it was a journey to discovering myself and realizing what I like to do. So I like, I realized I like to teach, or I like to educate, or I like to lead groups or build communities, etc. So that was the stage one of it. And then the stage two was after I traveled through Asia, Europe, Australia, I'd come back to Vancouver. And then that's when I started my event production business. So I was running different events. And I still like doing that, but it tied me too much to a location. And it didn't give me that freedom that I really valued. So I think what I really realized is, what do I value and what are my core values and what's important to me at the end of the day. So for me, I call it like the F's. So like faith, I'm a Christian, so my faith's very important. Freedom's very important to me. So being not freedom of time, freedom of location, freedom of money, freedom to do what I want with who I want, where I want. And then, having fun with everything I do. I really like that F as well. Fitness, exercising, working out. That's something I struggle with, but I know it's important. So I still hold that up as an important value in my life. And then obviously family, my marriage is the most important to me. I could have the most successful business in the world, but if I fail in my marriage, that would be a heartbreak to me. So I really, if I have to choose, I'll choose marriage every day of the week, and I'll choose my kids every day of the week over my business. And I think a lot of us men, we struggle with that because we focus so much on our work or our business or our achievements or finding results. But really, it's the relationships in the day. For me, anyway. So you got to figure out what's important to you. So for me, faith, family, fun, freedom, etc. And that's when I really went into entrepreneurship in terms of like starting that event production business, and now realizing I need that freedom of time, location, and money. And that's why I'm really focusing on the digital lifestyle, the digital nomad lifestyle, because it really encompasses everything that's important to me. So the travel, the family, the community building, the traveling around the world, the making income online, helping people, changing people, transforming their lives, inspiring them, right? So I think the journey to entrepreneurship is really the journey to discovering who you are. And the more you can figure out who you are, I think the more successful you'll be in entrepreneurship, because then you're going to really figure out and seek what's really important to you.
That makes a lot of sense, Ricky. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate you asking that question. I've never been asked in that way, and I'm really passionate about it. So I'm glad you were able to ask me that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I've met quite a lot of people who didn't jump into entrepreneurship for the money, as a lot of people believe. Money is just a byproduct of it. But a lot of people go into entrepreneurship because they want something different. They don't want the conventional 9 to 5, or the kind of life that's you're supposed to have, because most people lead it that way. And a lot of people do value, let's say, their family quite a bit more than anything else, or their time to exercise, or their time to travel. And unless you do something on your own, you can't manage that with, let's say, a full-time job, right? You can't travel a lot if you need to be at the office all the time. You can't exercise five days a week by 2-3 hours per day. I mean, you can, but it's almost impossible to do that. So a lot of people go into entrepreneurship, in my opinion, in my experience, not simply for the money, but rather for a different lifestyle that they think they could lead easier while being an entrepreneur rather than being an employee.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think people seek that kind of the freedom aspect. But I also want to be honest, because like when I first started as an entrepreneur, my time was really invested more in my business, because I went from a 9 to 5 kind of like a bank job or a teaching job. And then now I was working like a 9 to 9 or like a 9 to midnight or like a weekend job too, right? Because I was really building up my business, and that required me to network a lot. So a lot of my evenings were busy, then a lot of my weekends were busy too. So it might sound glamorous to say, "Oh, we're going to leave a 9 to 5 job and we're just going to live as entrepreneurs, make money." But it's a struggle, because if you just leave your job and become an entrepreneur, unless you have a really hot business, it's going to be hard to even get that full-time income, that, like the stable income you had a job, that the regular paycheck. When you move into entrepreneurship, sometimes you're not even going to make that full-time income. You might be just struggling with the part-time income, or living on savings, or going into credit card debt, or financial debt, etc. So just don't want to like rosy coat the entrepreneur journey, because the entrepreneur journey is a very difficult one. There are a lot of struggles, and it can be also a very lonely journey, because when you struggle as an entrepreneur, especially as a man, I basically didn't want to tell other people my struggles, and I very much held it inside. And I when I was struggling in my business and struggling to make income, I wouldn't share that publicly with many people, and that actually affected my business even more negatively. And something I've learned is I should have actually shared, because every entrepreneur that I know, even the really successful ones, were a failure, and they were a failure multiple times. Failure practically, but also thinking they're a failure internally. And even though your business might fail, that doesn't mean you're a failure. But if you fail in your business, you kind of feel like you're a failure internally too. So it's definitely an emotional kind of up and down, a roller coaster. So to all your listeners, I just want to be, making people aware that it will be a roller coaster if you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that I try to share all the time with my readers or with my listeners, that there is no shortcut to success. There's no easy way to it. And it's not like, you're going to work 2 hours per week on your venture and then you're going to become a millionaire by the next week. Guys, that's not going to happen. You have to put in a lot of work, a lot of effort. And as you just mentioned, Ricky, probably even more hours than working a regular job, especially at the beginning, because I know for me that was the case when I was just starting the whole, not even extra paycheck blog. That was just before that, when I was just getting into online marketing. I think there were times that I was spending 24 hours in a day in front of the computer. That's meaning a day and a night, sleepless completely for 24 hours straight or more in front of the computer. I was really excited about what I was learning, so I wanted to learn as much as I could, and I wanted to take as much action as I could. So it wasn't like a struggle of doing that. I didn't like hate doing it. I loved it. This is why I spent so much time. But the fact is that it wasn't just, a few hours here and there, and it was really a lot of time invested, especially at the beginning. So yeah, that's something that people should know and they should be aware of before jumping into the whole entrepreneurship game.
Yeah, and I liked how you said, because you're passionate about it, you don't even look at it as work as much. So I think it's really important when you're choosing, like we're talking about blogging, obviously, in this interview. If you're choosing a blog, don't just do it for the money aspect. Really figure out what is your passion. And when people ask me what a definition of a blog is, I look at a blog as really you're writing about your passion. Period. Writing about your passion. And with entrepreneurship, you're working in your passion. And if you can really find that kind of the passion point through knowing yourself, like I was talking about, right? So the more you know yourself, the more you know your passions, and the passion should lead to profit, but it doesn't necessarily. Some people say like do what you love and the money will follow, but again, that might not be fully accurate, because you can do what you love and you can be fully passionate about it. You can invest a lot of time into it, but that doesn't mean like a paycheck's going to come your way. Because like I follow my passion for months and months, and I got very little ROI on it, right? So sometimes it can be a struggle because you're investing your time, which is even more important than your money, right? Your time is your most valuable resource. You ask.
Yeah.
So if you're investing your time, your mindset, which is again one of your most valuable assets, your mind, and then all your resources, right? You're reinvesting all that, and you're not seeing a return. There's going to be, like I said, the self-doubt, the struggles, the insecurities, etc. But I think, and I know that the things I've been most passionate about, I've been able to overcome kind of those valleys. But those things I wasn't fully passionate about, but I was doing just because I was doing them, I soon gave up on them. And it was a good thing. I'm glad I failed. I'm glad I gave up on them, because then I was able to find out the true north, they call it, or your true passions.
Yeah, totally. All right, Ricky. So before you go, I'd like to ask you one very important question, and I usually ask every guest about it. What would be your most important advice to give out to new entrepreneurs, maybe beginner bloggers, or pretty much a beginner entrepreneur who either is just starting a business or who simply wants to start working on their own business, online or offline? What would be that most important piece of advice?
Yeah, my most important piece of advice would be really the purpose element, and the purpose and the why. So there's a really good book, and it's really changed me profoundly, and I recommend it whenever people ask me for a recommendation. It's called Start With Why. It's by Simon Sinek, and he has a great TED Talk as well. It's one of the most, the 5 most viewed TED Talks in the world. If you go to Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Mm-hmm. And also he has a book element and he has a workbook element. So I've done all three. I've read the book fully from front to back, highlighted and underlined and all that jazz. I've also watched the TED interview probably, at least a dozen times or so. And then I've also done his workbook element where you really figure out what is your why, and you're able to figure out your purpose statement and your values. And, I think this is something I've really learned as well in business. When I just started some of my previous businesses, I just went gung-ho and I kind of learned as I went, but I didn't really have the kind of the purpose built in, and the mission statement, the vision statement, the values. But that's really the heart of any business, any company, is the mission, the vision, the values. So if you can figure that out at the beginning, it will make your business go a lot more smoother, and you can change the what and the how. And the why should be really your foundation. So the advice I would give to anyone and everyone listening is figure out your personal why. For me, it's really my family at the end of the day. And that's why I keep talking about, like, it all goes back to my wife and kids at the end of the day. Am I being the best husband? Am I being the best father? Am I building the best family? And then I go look, how easy, how can I change my business, modify it, et cetera. Because I don't care if my business fails, but I do care if my family fails, because I can build a business again. I can get a job. I can make money in different ways, right? But once my family is broken, it's very hard to repair that. So I know I feel so passionately in my heart of hearts, and it goes all the way back to my childhood and my upbringing and my value system and who I am today and what I write about today and what I talk about and who I am. It really is this why is connected deeply to my family and my kids and building on the next legacy. So as you're listening, figure out what is your why. And the more you know it, the more you'll succeed in your business.
Thanks for sharing that. Great advice, Ricky. And one more thing I'm going to ask is, how can people find out more about stuff that you do?
Yeah, so I have daddyblogger.com. That's a website that's been around for 3 years, and a lot of people know me as that. And now I have this new website specifically targeting family travel, so make sure you check that out as well, familytravelbloggers.com. And make sure you connect with me on social media. I love connecting with people. I'd be happy to add you on Facebook or connect you with you on LinkedIn or follow you back on Twitter. Just connect with me, Ricky Shetty. And I look forward to connecting with your listeners, Alex.
All right. Thanks so much, man, for being on the show. I really appreciate your advice and your experiences that you've shared today with us. Thank you.
And thank you. Thanks for having me on, Alex.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. You can find the show notes page at extrapodcast.com/41. This is where I'll be sharing all the details and resources of today's episode. You can also head to extrapodcast.com/iTunes. This is where you can subscribe to the show via iTunes Store. This is where you can also leave a rating and a review for the show, which I would appreciate a lot. So thank you once again for listening, and I'll talk to you next Monday.